I'm bringing you a story about an incident so chilling, you'll clutch your ears and swear off ever going on a road trip with your friends again. No more spontaneous weekend getaways, no picnics, no trips, especially when you hear the kind of terrifying things that can happen on them. Some incidents leave a dark, ugly mark on your soul. This is one of them. This story starts in Boston, Massachusetts, where 4 lifelong friends lived. There was Adam, Victor, Ethan, and Kyle. These guys were the ultimate bookworms, the textbook definition of straight-A students. They went to school together from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and their world rarely extended beyond the pages of a textbook. They never traveled, never went out much. It was just studies, studies, studies. When their final exam results came in, they were thrilled. Their scores were great, even better than their parents had hoped. Now it was time for college. They decided they wanted to leave Boston and go somewhere bigger, maybe New York City or Philadelphia. But then Ethan spoke up. "Hold on, guys, we're going to get separated, right? College, then jobs, marriage, kids. We'll get busy. We won't get these school days back. No more group study sessions or late-night talks. We don't have a single crazy memory to tell our kids. Let's give our school years a proper farewell. We need to create a memory." Everyone agreed they had to take a trip. But where? After 2 days of brainstorming, they landed on a beach trip. But not just any beach. "Let's go to Whaling Point Beach in New England," said Ethan. Whaling Point Beach, the stories about that place are infamous. It's locally known as one of the most haunted spots on the East Coast. Ethan, who was the most reckless of the group, started pressuring the others. Victor and Adam hadn't heard much about it, so they asked why it was so haunted. Kyle and Ethan explained. A long time ago, this beach was used as an unofficial dumping ground for bodies and a makeshift cremation site during a colonial-era epidemic. So many bodies were burned that the ashes mixed with the sand, turning it dark and gritty. That's why it's called the Black Sands of Whaling Point. Legend says that if you go there at night, you're almost guaranteed to run into a ghost. Adam and Victor were immediately freaked out. "No way, Kyle. Ethan. That's a terrible idea. We're not going to a haunted site for fun. Aren't there enough beautiful beaches in Massachusetts?" But Kyle and Ethan kept pushing and eventually convinced them. Victor, however, had a condition. "Fine, but I'm bringing Leo. He lives in my neighborhood and I trust him. He's got some nerve." Leo's parents were completely against it. If that place is haunted, why would you go there? Go anywhere else. But Leo, now invested in the idea, managed to convince them too. Finally, Sunday arrived, the day of the trip. Since they were all just barely 18 and didn't have licenses, they rented a van with a driver. They packed snacks and started their journey. They had barely driven a mile from Adam's house when 2 black cats ran out fighting and were crushed under their tire. The trip had just begun, and they had killed 2 cats. Everyone was stunned. The driver's hands were shaking. Victor, seated in the back, gasped. "That's a terrible omen. I always heard that if you kill a cat, you have to offer a gold statue of a cat at a temple, or you'll suffer a terrible sin." Leo was pale with fear. The driver suggested pulling over. "My grandmother always said killing a cat before a journey is the worst luck. We should stop this trip right now." But Ethan and Kyle jumped in. "Seriously, guys? What is this, 1950? We're starting a trip. It was an accident. Let's not freak out." They managed to calm everyone down. "Look, we're here to have fun," Kyle insisted. Let's find a church or a mosque and say a quick prayer to apologize, then keep going." They found a spot. The friends went in to pray. Leo stayed in the car, and then they were back on the road. They had started in the evening, and now it was completely dark. They were speeding down a remote wooded highway when the van suddenly swerved violently out of control. Leo and Victor, who had dozed off, screamed, startled. The driver slammed the accelerator instead of the brake, and the van smashed into a tree. They all survived with minor cuts and bruises, but they jumped out and started yelling at the driver. "What are you doing? First the cats, now this. Can you even drive?" The driver pleaded, "You've got it wrong. I was driving carefully, but a dead black cow suddenly appeared in the middle of the road. I swerved to avoid hitting it, lost control on a large rock, and then you boys screamed, which made me hit the gas instead of the brake." They went to check. Sure enough, a large, dead black cow had been hit by another vehicle and was lying there. Leo was truly scared now. "Guys, I told you I didn't want to come. First the cats, then the cow. I heard back home that seeing a dead cow on the road means death is waiting for you ahead. Let's just turn around. We're not too far from Boston. We can hang out at a diner, grab some coffee, and go back." But Ethan and Kyle were adamant. "No way, that's just a coincidence, Leo. You're letting old wives' tales control you. We're modern people. Whatever happens, happens for a reason. Get in the car." They managed to convince the rest that the incidents were just bad luck, not a curse. They got back in the van, wide awake, turning the music up, and the driver was hyper alert. They finally reached Whaling Point Beach. They checked into a hotel nearby. They had planned for a 3-day trip. The hotel staff confirmed their reservations, and they were chatting with a young bellboy who was giving them tips on the beach. The bellboy smiled and then got serious. "You know the stories, right? About the beach being haunted. Look, I've worked here for 7 years and I've never seen a ghost. Neither have my friends, but people say they appear at night. For your own safety, don't go to the beach after dark." This, of course, was exactly what Kyle wanted to hear. After the bellboy left, Kyle started his sales pitch. "Guys, memories. Tonight is the night. We came here to do something epic, something different. We've just got to go to the beach now." They had to sneak out. The hotel bordered the beach, so they slipped out the back door and onto the sand, bypassing the main guarded entrance. The air was fresh. The sound of the waves crashing was beautiful. They all felt a thrill. They laughed at the ghost stories. "See? This is just sand darkened by chemicals, not human ash." "People exaggerate," they said. They walked far down the beach and settled near the water's edge, sharing scary stories of their own. As Leo finished telling his story, a sudden gust of wind brought with it the faint sound of someone weeping. They went quiet. "Wait, who's crying? It's just us 5 here." They turned on their phone flashlights and searched. Near the water, a woman was standing, staring out at the ocean, slowly walking toward the deep water. They rushed over. "Ma'am, hello, stop. What's wrong?" She turned. She looked elegant, fair-skinned, and beautiful, perhaps in her mid-30s. "What's wrong?" she said, tears streaming. "My life is ruined. My husband died recently. I brought my son here for a change of scenery, but he's mentally unstable. I dozed off in the hotel room, and when I woke up, the door was open and he was gone. He must have run out to the beach. I can't find him anywhere. If anything has happened to my baby, I don't want to live." She started running towards the water. Wait, ma'am, we can help you. Don't worry. Adam, the quickest thinker, said, Leo, you stay here with the lady and keep her calm. The rest of us will go search for the boy. Leo agreed, and the four friends rushed off to search. The woman said her son was about 7 or 8 years old, and he was mentally unstable. They searched for half an hour, getting frustrated. They decided to head back, tell the woman they failed, and call the police. As they turned back, they heard weeping again. It was coming from behind a large rock formation. They shone their lights and found a boy, about 8 years old, sitting and crying. Son, who are you? Why are you crying? Adam asked. The boy looked up. I don't know where my mom went. We came here to visit. I just walked out of the room and now I'm lost. The boys were relieved. Your mom is worried sick. Come on, we'll take you to her. The boy got up and walked with them. They returned to the spot where they had left Leo and the woman, but they were gone. They searched the area thinking they must have gone back to the hotel. They quietly checked the hotel, but the staff knew nothing. Suddenly, the boy spoke. Maybe my mom took your friend to my uncle's house. My uncle lives close by. Mom and he talk all the time about visiting. The friends looked at each other. This kid seemed perfectly fine. He was speaking clearly, remembering locations. His mother said he was mentally unstable. Maybe the mother is the one with the problem. Where does your uncle live, son? Can you show us? The boy led them off the main road, deep into a forested outer area. They kept driving until they saw a huge old house. The only one around, it looked like a mansion out of a horror movie. The boy said, That's my uncle's place. It looks scary because he loves horror movies and built it that way. My mom and your friend must be inside. I'll go get them. You guys wait here or my uncle will get mad if he sees you wandering around. He ran inside. 10, 20, 30 minutes passed. No one came out. This is crazy. Let's go in. They called for Leo, for the boy, and for the woman. No reply. They searched the entire massive house. It was full of dust, cobwebs, and old furniture. It was completely empty. There was no one in the whole house. We have to go, the driver urged. We need to go back to the hotel and talk to the staff about Leo. They raced back to the hotel. Just as they were about to go in, Kyle stopped them. Wait, let's check the beach one last time. Maybe they came back to the spot. They ran to the spot where they had left Leo. There, Leo was lying unconscious. They rushed to him. His body was soaking wet and ice cold. His eyes were rolled back. He had no pulse. They screamed and cried. They called 911. The paramedics arrived and administered CPR. Miraculously, Leo's heartbeat started again. They rushed him to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctors revealed the shocking truth. Leo had suffered a massive, vicious wound on his back. It looked like he had been attacked by a large marine creature, maybe a shark or a deep-sea predator. The doctor said the creature must have attacked him, dragged him into the water, and then inexplicably thrown him back out, which is why they found him at the water's edge. Leo had lost a lot of blood and had water in his lungs. The doctors did what they could, but after being transferred to a hospital in New York City, Leo fought for 8 days and then tragically passed away. The boys never found out who the woman was, where the child went, or what really happened in that house. They swore an oath among themselves. They would never go on another trip again. Today's full real incident was submitted by Peter, and it happened to his cousin, Ray, back in 2017. Ray's father was a complete skeptic about anything paranormal, but Peter's father was a firm believer. They lived in separate sections of the same house, cousins who grew up together. Peter is younger and Ray is his older cousin. Peter said that a commuter rail station was near their home in the suburbs of Newark, New Jersey. That particular station was known for attracting people who drank near the tracks, where there was less police presence. One night, Ray came home after drinking with friends. He started screaming that he was in excruciating pain. His stomach felt like it was ripping apart. Since Ray's dad wasn't home, Peter's dad took him to the ER. The doctor checked him and said it was nothing serious, just a bad stomach ache. Give him a painkiller and let him sleep. Peter's dad brought Ray home, gave him the pill, and he finally slept. The next morning, Ray woke up and started screaming even louder. "My stomach is going to burst. It's going to burst." Ray's dad had already gone to his job as a bus driver for the city transit, so Peter's dad was the one trying to manage the situation. Ray was screaming so hard that tears were streaming down his face. His mother and Peter's parents tried to calm him down, urging him to get up so they could go back to the hospital. Suddenly, Ray stopped crying and said, "I want to go, but that woman won't let me." Everyone froze. "What woman?" Ray explained. "There's a woman sitting on top of the closet, staring at me, and she won't let me move." They turned around, saw nothing, and tried desperately to pull Ray up. They pulled his arms and legs, but he was completely stuck to the bed. As they struggled, Ray's nose began to bleed profusely. Frightened, they let him go. Peter's dad knew this was serious. Something major had followed Ray home. Ray's mom was starting to believe, but his skeptical father was still at work. They called him, explained the bleeding, but he just dismissed it. "It's nothing. Take him to a doctor. He'll be fine." Ray's dad had no idea the danger his son was in. Peter's dad, the believer, immediately called his friend Nelson. Nelson lived in Queens, NYC, and was known for his strong spiritual practices. Nelson listened and said, "Bring him to me immediately. This is not a simple case. Get him in the car and come as fast as you can." Peter's dad started the car, picked up Peter and Ray, and headed towards Queens. On the way, they stopped to fill up with gas. Suddenly, Ray opened his eyes and asked normally, "Uncle, where are we going?" Peter and his dad looked at each other, confused. Ray was completely fine now. Peter's dad said, "We just came to get some gas, Ray. You've been lying down for so long." He immediately called Nelson and explained that Ray was acting normal again. Nelson, a very wise man, asked to speak to Ray. Ray spoke on the phone perfectly normally, showing no signs of possession. Nelson told Peter's dad, "He's fine now. Take him home. I'll come over tomorrow and see what the problem is." The family returned home, but that night, Ray would cry out in pain and agony all night long. The next day, Nelson arrived and confirmed their fears. Ray had brought a very powerful entity back from the train tracks. He gave Ray a protective locket and said they would need to perform a cleansing ceremony in 2 days. He warned them. For 1 week after the ceremony, keep him home. Keep him away from white sweets or food. Do not let him go to any parties or functions. Ray made it through 2 strange nights where he would twitch and jerk in his sleep like someone experiencing sleep paralysis who suddenly snaps out of it. 2 days later, Nelson performed the ceremony. Even during the ritual, Ray was drained of energy, looking completely depleted. After the ceremony, Nelson repeated his strict instructions. Ray was fine for 3 days, but on the 6th day, the stubborn Ray attended a friend's wedding reception. He ate, drank with his friends, and came straight home. The severe stomach pain started again. Ray's dad, the skeptic, was on his night shift and told Ray to just take a painkiller and stop the drama. Peter's dad had to take charge again. He called Nelson and confessed that Ray had broken the rule and gone to a party. Nelson was frustrated. "I did the ceremony. If the instructions are violated, of course, the trouble will return." He told them the only option left was to take Ray to St. Jude's Sanctuary, the local equivalent of a powerful holy site, the very next day. Nelson managed to use his prayers to calm Ray down that night. The next day at 4 p.m., 4 of them, Nelson, Peter, Peter's dad, and Ray, set out for the sanctuary. They were driving out of the city, and suddenly, Ray, sitting in the back with Nelson, yelled, "Someone is running next to the car! Someone is running next to the car!" Nelson and the others looked around. Nelson felt a presence, too. As evening turned to night, Ray was screaming, "She's here! She's here! She's going to take me!" Nelson quickly took his protective prayer beads and placed them around Ray's neck, strictly commanding Peter's dad, "Don't stop anywhere. We are driving straight to the sanctuary." A while later, Nelson felt they wouldn't make it to the sanctuary that night. He worried the entities, which he now sensed were traveling with them, would cause trouble for the car or the people. He suggested staying at his aunt's place, which was on their route. They started following Nelson's vague directions, but suddenly, Nelson completely lost his way. He looked around. They were surrounded by empty fields. They drove back a bit to the town they were looking for, but the 4 houses they saw had their lights off and locks on the doors. This wasn't the place. They saw one house with a light on in the distance. Nelson thought that might be it. They drove up and a family of 4 was sitting outside. They asked the head of the family, "We're looking for my Aunt Susan," the replacement name for the family member. "Do you know where she lives?" The man said, "Oh, you mean Susan Johnson. She lives about 2 miles that way," and gave them directions. They drove to the spot. It was pitch black. They got out of the car and Peter's dad used his phone's flashlight to see where they were standing. His heart dropped. They were standing in a graveyard. Peter's dad was standing on top of the burnt remains of a pyre. Even Nelson had been completely fooled. Their powers had been blocked. They quickly jumped back in the car. They drove back to the house where the family had given them directions, but now only a dilapidated, broken-down shack stood there. The whole encounter was a trick, a terrifying illusion to lead them to a deadly place. They had no choice but to push straight on to the sanctuary. At the sanctuary, Nelson and the priests took Ray inside. The ceremony began. Ray didn't thrash or scream, but he kept changing his facial expressions dramatically, as if different beings were entering and leaving his body. The ritual was completed. They got back in the car to drive home. On the way back, Ray started acting differently again. Nelson worried the original entities had stayed at the sanctuary's border, and new ones had followed Ray back, but Ray was talking to them the whole way home, so they assumed everything was fine. However, as soon as they got home, the problem started again. Ray told his mother he was starving. His mother started feeding him, and Ray ate 7 or 8 dinner rolls, an alarming amount, but his mother thought he hadn't eaten properly in days. Ray went to lie down on the couch. After half an hour, he opened his eyes and said, "Mom, you didn't give me any food. I'm so hungry." Ray insisted and ate 10 more dinner rolls, sitting alone in the corner of the room. Peter's dad walked in and asked why he was sitting in the corner. Ray's reply gave Peter's dad chills. I would eat on the couch, but these three spirits are sitting there. They are attacking me so much. How can I sit there? Peter's dad called Nelson immediately. Nelson prayed and called back an hour later. Peter's dad. Some spirits followed Ray back from the sanctuary. The ones he had are gone, but new ones are attached to him. He must have stepped on something, or someone gave him blessed food there that brought them on. Ray had become a gateway. Spirits were coming and going through his body. Since Nelson was away on another case, he told them to rely on Bible readings and holy water for 3 or 4 days. Ray was quiet that night, but the next day he wouldn't wake up. They kept trying. Peter's dad splashed holy water on his face. Ray suddenly woke up and said, "Mom, I'm hungry." He ate 10 rolls and went back to sleep. This cycle continued all day. He'd wake up, eat 10 rolls, and sleep again. When Peter's dad started playing a recording of the Lord's Prayer in the house, Ray began scratching himself violently, as if something was itching him deep inside. He screamed, "Turn it off. Please turn it off. They are bothering me." Peter's dad splashed him with holy water again. Ray flew off the bed, a soul-piercing cry escaping him. He ran at Peter's dad, who kept reciting a prayer. Ray was forced back to the bed. After 3 or 4 agonizing days, Ray's father, the former skeptic, was standing beside Peter's dad, watching in horror. Nelson finally returned. He said they needed to perform one final, powerful cleansing ceremony, and that after this, Ray couldn't leave the house for at least a month and a half. During the ceremony, Ray was screaming, "She will kill me! She will kill me! She will kill me!" When Nelson forced the entity to reveal itself, Ray explained. When he returned from the sanctuary, he saw a woman at the door who had no lower body. Ray, feeling confident after the initial cleansing, had taunted her. "You alone can't do anything to me. Go and bring others." Half an hour later, Ray saw 3 spirits, the woman with no legs, a man with a completely mutilated face, and a man with half a body. These 3 had possessed him. The final ceremony was intense, lasting 4 or 5 hours. For a month and a half in 2017, Ray was not allowed to leave the house. Finally, he returned to normal.